In the dark of night, when the moon is hidden behind the clouds and only the rustle of the wind can be heard among the trees, the inhabitants of a small town begin to tell a story about an old abandoned house on the outskirts. This house was abandoned decades ago after strange and unexplained incidents, and now it is rumored to be haunted. Local old-timers say they've seen glowing shadows sliding along the walls, heard footsteps in the empty hallways, and even heard quiet, measured moans in the darkness. No one dared enter this house, and even the most desperate teenagers avoided it at night. One dark fall night, a group of friends decided to test how scary the stories were. Young and fearless, they gathered outside the house, armed with flashlights and cameras in case something happened. As they approached the door, they felt the temperature around them plummet, as if a cold breath was permeating the air. One of the guys opened the door and their flashlights illuminated the dusty furniture and tattered wallpaper. The air was so heavy they could almost feel it. As they passed through the hallways, they heard rustles and creaking wooden steps, though none of them moved. In the rooms, they saw shadows that disappeared as soon as they looked at them, and heard quiet whispers, as if someone had whispered their names. One of the friends suddenly stopped, frozen in place. He said he could see the shadow of a man in the mirror who was not reflected in his flashlight. The others immediately turned around, but the mirror was empty. Suddenly, the room was filled with icy coldness, and ghostly figures began to emerge from the shadows. They were people in old-fashioned clothes, with grim expressions on their faces. They came closer and closer, their silhouettes blurred in the darkness, but their presence was obvious. The friends rushed to the door, but it slammed shut in their faces with a loud creak. They screamed and started pounding on the door, trying to get out. There was silence in the air, and the next moment the door opened as if nothing had happened. They ran outside, breathing heavily and shaking with fear. From that moment they never went to that house again. They never told anyone what they had seen there, but their faces spoke for themselves. Since then, the locals have avoided that abandoned house even more. And the story of the ghosts that haunt its walls became even more alive and scary than before. But one local boy, named Maxim, decided to take a bold step. He has always considered himself a skeptic about supernatural phenomena and decided that all these stories about ghosts, just myths and scary stories. That very fall night, as the wind rustled among the trees, he approached the abandoned house alone. Maxim was armed only with his flashlight and his smartphone, on which he recorded video in the hope of capturing something unusual. At first glance, the house seemed ordinary to him, abandoned and forgotten by time. He decided to start his inspection on the first floor. Walking through the corridors, Maxim felt confident. Suddenly he heard some footsteps behind him, but turning around he saw no one. He decided that it was just his imagination and moved on. All he saw in the rooms was dust and destruction, nothing out of the ordinary. However, when he entered the main living room, where an antique mirror stood, something made him freeze. In the reflection of the mirror he saw the figure of a woman in a long 19th century dress. She stood behind him, unmoving, looking at him with a sad expression. Maxim turned around, but there was no one behind him. He shuddered and turned to the mirror again, but the figure had disappeared. Suddenly the room felt cold, as if the air around him had suddenly frozen. He heard whispers, low and ghostly, as if the ghosts were discussing his presence. Suddenly, the light from the flashlight began to flicker, as if its energy had been drained from him. Maxim felt a terror he had not known before. He tried to run out, but the door slammed in his face. Now he was trapped, surrounded by shadows and strange sounds. He closed his eyes and screamed, but his voice was swallowed up by silence. Suddenly, he felt someone or something walk past him, piercingly cold. They were vague images of people whose faces had been lost to time. Maxim felt his power leave him, and his smartphone fell to the floor, disconnected. Words in an ancient language rang in his ears that he couldn't understand. He knew he had to get out or he would be held here forever. Suddenly, the door opened again, and Maxim ran outside, gripped by animal fear. His friends found him closer to morning, with an unhealthy glint in his eyes and a pale face. He couldn't explain what had happened, but everyone realized that he had experienced something incredible. From then on, Maxim never again tried to test his beliefs about ghosts. He became convinced that the abandoned house was haunted by forces beyond the comprehension of living people. The story of his adventure spread through the town, increasing the fear of that mysterious place even more.